encounter. So right off the bat, we're gonna see them go right into the glitching here. So you might notice a difference from other versions of FF1. In this particular one, there is a glitch in the memory cursor here. Where am I hearing that from? So if they turn the memory cursor on, and then they can pick up certain pieces of equipment, either from treasure chests or from shops here, they can scroll over between their characters at the same time that they press confirm on a specific equipment slot and take advantage of an unusual glitch that allows them to duplicate and create equipment out of nowhere. So right off the bat, they went into the weapon shop, they picked up a hammer in the first town, Cornelia, and then used this equipment glitch to turn it into a piece of armor known as the Knight's Armor. You guys might be more familiar with that from the FF1. It's the armor sold for knights in the town of Melmond normally. But by obtaining it this early and putting it on each of our characters, we've significantly raised their defense so that they are in no danger from random encounters in the early going. So the big advantage in this version of the game is that utilizing this glitch allows us to get extreme stats, especially from a lot of the gear that has been added in some of the remakes of this one. In this particular version of it, there's been some additional content added, and as a result, some additional equipment added. And we'll be glitching some items that normally wouldn't be obtainable unless you went through all of the bonus content designed for the end game in this version. The bonus Labyrinth of Time dungeon is actually located here at the very back of the Chaos Shrine here, but it's not open until you defeat all 4 of the Fiends and then return here. But we won't actually be visiting it. We're just borrowing its very convenient equipment. So right off the bat, these guys have basically glitched a copy of the Knight's Armor onto each of their 4 characters, and here they're going to be glitching again. So we're going to detour here to pick up this leather cap to perform another glitch. And this time they're going to turn that leather cap into a Judgment Staff. So this is one of the PSP exclusive bonus items that has been added, and the Judgment Staff is the strongest weapon in the game for casters. And when used as an item in combat, it actually casts Flare, which is the most powerful black magic spell in the game. So the race timers have been synced now, so we should be able to see who's doing what. So while they're still overpowered and not really at danger of dying, they're still at the mercy of enemies in terms of being able to run away from them. So right now they're still very low level because they haven't gained any experience at all to this point. They haven't had to fight anything. So the first required fight here is going to be Garland. They're going to be trying to 3 or 4 hit it. They've put the Judgment Staff on each of these characters, and the attack power from that is more than enough to basically take out Garland in anywhere from 2 to 4 hits, depending on our character. So it should be a 1-round fight. Looks like Suikoboj is the first one to finish the Garland fight here. Chris is still getting stuck with some wolves, unfortunately for him. Trying to run away. Okay, so Swicky's just going through a quick cutscene here. Some minor cutscenes have been added here to flesh out the story a little bit. And also, he's going to talk to the princess to obtain the loot here. This actually skips a slight cutscene if you opt to talk to her directly. If you try to walk out of the room, in this version of the game, they've programmed it so she'll call you back and hand you the loot. So you can't do what you do in the NES version where you can walk out of the room without picking up the loot and forget it. You can't forget it in this version. Looks like Chris had no trouble either. So there's really no danger to the runners in the early going here. They're just trying to get as quickly as possible from point A to B. In this case, they're just trying to get over to the Chaos Shrine to take on Garland. This will restore the bridge here, which gives them access to Provoca. Once in Provoca, they can go challenge a group of pirates and pick up a boat, which will unlock more of the world map that they can get to. Much of the progression in this is going to be very similar to the NES and other versions of the game. They will have to basically complete all the events in the game as usual. They just won't have to grind anywhere near as much as the equipment that they're able to glitch can make up for a lot of the the stat deficiencies they would otherwise have. So this is a forced cutscene here. Even in the original game it is. But cutscenes are also skippable in this version. At least most of them are. So a lot of these, in the GBA version of the game, you can't actually skip a lot of these cutscenes, but you can shorten them or skip a lot of them here in the PSP version. So Suiki is the first one past this little cutscene here, and he's going to make his way over to Provoca. So he's going to walk through this very large forest here. The forest tiles in the game have a very high encounter rate. So you're going to notice if they stay on forest tiles, they're going to get more encounters than if they walk on other types of tiles on the world map. So where possible, it's to their benefit to try to walk on as few forest tiles as possible. So Suiki had actually a very good run over and gets into Provoca first. And he's going to get a little lost in the alleyways over here, but he's making his way over here to the item shop. So he's going to sell... he made a 5th copy of the Knight's Armor, so he made one for each of his characters and then made 2 for another character, and then took one of them off and then opted to sell it here. By selling it here, he gets 18,000 gil, which is more than enough supplies to get them through pretty much the entire adventure. So they'll pick up Phoenix Downs, Antidotes, Ethers, all of which are conveniently located here in the item shop. And then we're going to challenge the pirates here. And this convenient judgment staff is going to make very short work of them, so you don't have to hit them one by one over the course of 3 rounds of combat. We can just use this 8-second animation of judgment staff and take them out in one go. Which is much, much more convenient. So they're pretty synced so far. If I'm not mistaken, Chris actually did some shopping in Cornelia, so he's okay already and doesn't need to shop here for more items right now. Suikoboj opted instead to buy some items here, as Ethers are additionally available in Provoca, and they will prove more useful later on. So you might be wondering, Ethers, but this game doesn't have MP. Well, it actually does in this version. They retrofitted the MP system common to many of the later FF games onto this game and removed the spell charge system. So they assigned an MP value for many of the spells and put them all in the game. So they don't have any spell charges or anything. They just have a value of MP, which will grow up gradually. So their next destination is to make it over to Elfheim. Actually, it's to Marsh Cave, but they're going to detour into Elfheim quickly. They can detour in and out of Elfheim, and that can move them 2 steps closer to Marsh Cave, which means that's 2 less tiles they can risk getting an encounter on. They may or may not duck in there. That's honestly a runner preference, because it takes a little more time than it would to just straight run, but it's a slightly lower risk of getting encounters if they duck in and out. But then again, this game's RNG does not necessarily mean that just because you take the best path that you will get less encounters. It means you potentially could. So here we see Chris going into Elfheim, and he's actually going to be purchasing some gold needles off the bat here. This is a safety measure for later in the game to prevent his party being fully petrified and give him a method to recover from that later on. It's not strictly necessary, but it is highly recommended for races, as there are quite a number of jerk birds that can do some petrification here. So right now they're trying to make their way to Marsh Cave, which is their next goal. So again, they don't really need to grind at this point. They're just going to be working their way over here to Marsh Cave. And these little marsh tiles outside the cave here technically have a lower encounter rate than normal grass tiles or forest tiles. So they're going to be trying to walk on those, or at least it's advised that they walk on those as much as possible. And Marsh Cave is actually not anywhere near as dangerous as you would expect from a normal FF1 game. It's considerably easier here with the glitched equipment we have, and it has actually the lowest encounter rate in the game. So they should be able to make a pretty good run all the way over to the Pisco Demons, which are, you might know them as the wizards in the other versions of the game, but they're known as Pisco Demons in this one. And it's still guarding the crown here. They can still get anywhere from 2 to 4 here, but they are considerably less dangerous with the extreme defense that our characters are wearing. So while they might still do a bunch of damage, they're not going to be destroying our characters like they would. And once again, we're going to take advantage of the Judgment Staff to take them out in one thing. So it's a pretty close match so far. And it's hard for any meaningful lead to really mean anything this early in the run. The randomness of this particular category of the game is pretty extreme. So I mean, runners of a very similar skill could finish several minutes apart due to RNG alone. So there's a very heavy RNG component that they're just going to have to deal with and do their best to mitigate here while they do their runs. So Suikoboj is the first one out with the crown. So he's just got to backtrack to the entrance and then make his way up to Astos at the Western Keep. And Chris is at the Pisco Demon fight now, so he's going to be taking care of them as well. Okay, we have some undead enemies here on Suiko's side. It's a little dangerous because they have a chance to paralyze our characters on hit. So if they're extremely unfortunate, they might find themselves in what's known as a paralock, where all of their characters are paralyzed at the same time. If that happens, it's extremely unfortunate for the runner, and they're either just going to have to hopefully have taken a save and either save and reload, which is highly encouraged in this category. You have the ability to save anywhere in the game here. So it's usually advisable to do that before some dangerous sections, or they're just going to have to wait it out and see if they get lucky and one of their characters recovers and is able to either kill or otherwise run away from the enemies. So here we're seeing Chris is getting a little unluckier, but he got away from it. So we have Suikoboj with an early lead here as he makes his way into Western Keep. So again, they haven't really fought anything other than a couple required fights to this point. And Astos is probably the single most lucrative fight in terms of getting experience in the early going here. So this is one of the most complicated fights we have in the run for quite a while. So we're going to be using attacks with our melee characters, and he's going to be using the Judgment Staff with his mage characters. The goal is to kill Astos in one round if possible. He's got to do 420 damage in this version of the game to kill him. And that should be possible if the white mage rolls over 200 damage with the Judgment Staff roll, or if the melee characters do at least 80 damage between their two attacks. But here we have Astos actually cast Death on the appropriately named Dan over here on Suikoboj. 8 the Death. So that's one of his attacks. Oh, we got the Mithril Sword drop too, nice. Let's see what happens with Chris's side. So Swicky's all set, he's just going to have to res that warrior at some point. But his next goal, now that he has the Crystal Eye, he's going to take that back to Matoya, so he's going to have to just do a bunch of backtracking. In the meantime, he's going to be running away from enemies. So let's see how Chris does on Astos over here. So Astos played a little bit nicer for him and just decided to do a physical attack instead of cast his death spell. The lovely names of A, B, C, and D over here on Chris's side. Now you might look at that and be a little weird about why is D and C out of order. It's because he's planning to eventually do a formation change later on, which will line them up A, B, C, and D. But you're not going to see that for a little while. So Swicky continues to just make his way back over. And Chris is all set with Astos now. So they're both basically on the same step. It looks like Swicky's about a minute to a minute and a half ahead, depending on the encounters he's getting here. So this is a slightly newer route that is part of this category this year. It was either developed very late in the tournament, the last tournament we held, which was ended in, I believe, May of last year, early May. So what he's going to be doing here is he's going to be picking up spells for his Black Mage, specifically Fyra and Thundara. And he's going to be using those to deal with otherwise troublesome enemy groups that are vulnerable to them later on. So in this case, if he happens to run into a group of Sahagins, now his Black Mage has access to Thundara to be able to take them down quickly. And Swicky gets his Warrior Dan back up and running. That goes against the natural order of things, but I guess that's what he just has to do. So here we got a group of Sahagins here. He's going to try to run away. These can sometimes be problematic enemies. And if he fails to run away, it might behoove him to use Thundara to take them out instead. Oh, but he gets lucky and gets run away. And Swicky also picked up some gold needles while he was in Elfheim. Again, that's a great safety here for races. Not necessarily required if you're doing, PB or world record attempts. But it does leave you open to getting petrified or losing your run to cockatrices and things such as that. So Chris also tries to run away from a group of Sahagins and is successful. Swicky's just going to keep running away. So they're both just trying to make their way over to Matoya right now. Sea encounters are some of the worst in terms of just the enemies can waste a lot of time, and they have very high agility, which means they tend to outspeed your characters. A lot of our characters don't have a lot of high agility at this point in the run because we just haven't spent much time leveling them up other than what is absolutely required. And the only character that naturally gets a lot of agility is just the Thief. So, I mean, you might be also wondering, why are we using a Thief? Well, due to the equipment glitch and the overpowered equipment we can get, the damage he does scales very well with the equipment we can pick up. So he's actually our strongest melee damage dealer in this run. Both players are using a very specific party for this particular run. They're going to be using a Warrior Thief White Mage Black Mage combination, and they have been arranged specifically to facilitate some of the properties of the equipment glitch. Namely, they've been placed adjacent to each other in a specific order so that they can glitch from one character to the next one to make menuing a little quicker and faster here. So the benefits of each of the characters: the Warrior has access to the greatest amount of equipment here, and he'll be utilized primarily to facilitate most of the equipment glitching for the items that we choose to pick up here. The Thief is going to be doing the most damage in combat with the equipment we are able to pick up. And the glitch basically allows us to forego class restrictions in terms of the gear, and also slot restrictions. You might notice that they can put a knight's armor on like the glove slot on their characters, which is not normally where it belongs, and they can put it on each of their characters, which is not normally something you can do. So, I mean, equipment requirements are more of a suggestion in this particular category. So Chris stops over to Montoya here and returns the Jolt Tonic, and he's rewarded with... he returns the Crystal Eye and is rewarded with the Jolt Tonic. The Jolt Tonic is used with the Elf Prince over here on Suikoboj's side. And to finish my other thought on the White Mage and the Black Mage usefulness, the White Mage will be primarily for healing on the final boss fight, as Chaos still does quite a lot of damage in this particular category. And the Black Mage will be hasting, dealing with larger enemy packs that are often problematic to run away from with the spells that he's got. And he will also be casting Teleport after we class change, which will save us considerable time backtracking in later dungeons. So Swicky is the first one to return wake the Elf Prince and get the Mystic here, and he's going to immediately utilize this by exiting the Elven Castle and then re-entering to move closer to the treasure shop in the back of it. And then he's going to pick up two of the items there. He's going to pick up a Mithril Hammer and a Bronze Gloves, and he's going to turn this into a piece of armor known as the Thief's Armlet, which was an item added originally in the GBA version remake. And then the Sage's Staff is another bonus item that came out of this. So these combined items add 15 points of agility to each of our characters because they're going to glitch this Thief's Armlet. Each one gives 5 points of agility to the character, and also greatly increases their evasion and defensive capabilities. So they're beyond, they're using basically post-game items at this point, or, bonus items from that. And then the Sage's Staff here adds 15 points of agility, and they're going to put that on the Thief, and I believe the White Mage to start. And utilizing this, it's going to raise their intelligence to let them do more damage with spells later on. But as a side effect, it actually also increases their ability to run away. Swicky looked kind of a little bit lost there. So after glitches that, he returns to Cornelia. He's going to use the Mystic Key here to access the treasure room here in the back and pick up the Nitro Powder. Chris is still doing his menu here. He's glitching his characters. After this point, I mean, once each of our characters have 3 Thief's Armlets on them, they each have an additional 15 points of agility, and this greatly aids their ability to run away from combat, and it also makes their characters much, much more likely to take their turns earlier in the combat order. So from this point on, they should be in good shape for quite a while in terms of enemy encounters, at least until they get to the Earth Cave. It's like Chris gets to the nitro. Don't fight me. Okay, Swicky's making his way to, what is it, Mount Dwerger over here, which is the next destination. So they're in a large fetch quest. If you're familiar with the story of FF1, the early part of the game especially is a large fetch quest to try to open up this little area of the sea so that they can reach the rest of the map. So the last step of this is they have to acquire the Nitro Powder, as it's known in this version, and take it over here to Mount Dwerger. Once they have done that and handed it off to this dwarf named Narek down here, he will blow open a passageway for them to proceed on. So actually it looks like Swicky has actually fallen behind here for what looks like the first time in this run. So you can see that the lead has flipped a little bit, and Chris has opened up a slight lead here. So yeah, they just got to go down here, and this dwarf is named Narek. He has absolutely no regard for dwarven life. He is fully prepared to flood this and take down the rest of his race with him. For whatever reason. I mean, explosions are pretty cool, though. So yeah, they both have to just get through this little cutscene here where we see it blown open. Still a pretty even race right now. Earth Cave is likely to make this a little bit more interesting. So they can skip that little section where you saw Chris. They can't skip this part where it's scrolling the world map and showing you where this is taking place, but immediately after that, you can skip this little part. I'm not sure if Swicky knows that, though. It seems like he's not trying to skip it, or he forgot. And that little whirlpool there is actually one of the bonus dungeons that was originally added in the GBA version. We're unfortunately not going to be visiting it. So yeah, they're still just trying to make their way over now to Melmond. Is the next destination. Gyre's least favorite town, if you guys are a fan of Gyre or Fiesel streams. Yeah, Swicky's warrior is appropriately face down in the dirt. He could revive them. He could revive that Dan if he really, really wants to, but then, is he really a Dan then? If he's not lying on his face. Okay, Chris is the first one to reach Melmond here. So he can actually walk along the outside of that to get to his destination a little quicker. So he's going to go here and buy a pair of steel gloves here in the item shop here. And he's going to turn this into the single most powerful weapon that exists in this version of the game, known as the Barbarian Sword. So this is a weapon that has 125 attack power, which is considerably more than the Masamune or the Excalibur from the original version of the game, and on top of that boasts a 15-point strength bonus as well. So they're going to put that on 2 of their characters, possibly more. Some other routes of this game alter between putting it on anywhere from 2 to 4 characters in their party at this point in the run. And then once they have that, they have the capability of one-shotting almost any enemy in the game, with the exception of with the exception of the bosses. It's Suiko. And they're doing a quick equipment glitch here to put the Barbarian Sword on. And then just reassign a Sage's, move one of the Sage's staff overs from their Thief to their Black Mage. Alright, so Chris begins his descent into the Cavern of Earth here. So they have to make their way down to the 3rd floor and through a very counterclockwise path all along the 3rd floor to reach the vampire here, who's guarding a key item known as the what is it called? The Star Ruby in this version. Ultimately, we're here to take down the Lich, but unfortunately, due to the design of the dungeon, we're not able to go all the way to the Lich in one go. We have to make 2 trips here. The first trip here, we have to go defeat the vampire so we can pick up the Star Ruby. Then we have to take the Star Ruby over to the giant who's blocking a path. On the way to the Earth Rod, we need the Earth Rod to access the lower floors. So they have to go in here, go down and fight the vampire, pick up the ruby, and then they're going to have to backtrack all 3 floors out. So Chris is the first one to reach the vampire here. And this is where you're going to see the power of the Barbarian Sword demonstrated right off the bat. So with 1 hit from the Thief, the vampire's down just like that. Makes him a complete pushover in this version. And then he's going to pick up the Star Ruby over here. Suiki, on the other hand, is just going to keep going. He's dealing with an ambush over here. So we haven't talked about that yet. I mean, encounters can come in 3 different varieties. Enemies can ambush you, you can get a preemptive strike on enemies, or neither can happen. So if you get a preemptive, then you get a free chance to run on your first opportunity in the opening round. If it's an ambush, each enemy that's on the screen gets a chance to attack your characters before you get to act. And if nothing happens, then it just whoever takes their turn first. Suiko with another unfortunate ambush over here, and his character got poisoned, which is not a big deal in this particular version. We have antidotes to heal that, we have potions to be able to mitigate that. It's just annoying because if that happens, then he has to go, and at some point he'll have to go into the menu and take care of that, which just costs a few seconds. No, it looks like neither player opted to do the 15 puzzle. Those of you that are familiar with the game know that there is a 15 puzzle that, mini game that you can play if you're on the ship. You can only play it on the boat, though. In this particular version of the game, if you play the game and then finish in 2nd place, you have a 1 in 6 chance of obtaining an item called an emergency exit, which functions the same as the White Mage spell exit. So that would allow them to basically teleport all the way out of a dungeon of their choosing. The most common one to use it is this Cavern of Earth, with right after the vampire here, because it saves 3 floors of backtracking and can save an enormous amount of time. It's not a very common strategy you're going to see a lot in races because there's only a 1 in 6 chance that it's going to drop, and in order to get it, they have to play and finish in 2nd place. On the puzzle game, with the default time for 1st place set at 30 seconds and the default time for 2nd place set at 1 minute. So in order to finish in 2nd place, they have to play and score somewhere between 30 and 60 seconds. So it takes them a minimum of 30 seconds to play the game for a 1 in 6 chance at getting an item, which could save them maybe 2 or more minutes. And if they fail to get it, then the other items they pick up are usually not that worthwhile, and they've just wasted 30 seconds. So they absolutely, I mean, there's nothing stopping runners from going for that if they want to go for it. They just have to be able to be ready to deal with the risk of wasting 30 seconds. And I have not seen either player take a safety save at this point. As a reminder, they can save anywhere, and that is strongly recommended in a couple key spots, as that gives them the ability to recover in case they happen to die. Suiko's having a little bit of trouble over here, so he's actually just using his Black Mage to cast Fire on them and take them out in one go. Chris, meanwhile, has made his way over to Sada's cave and has given him, and as a reward for defeating Vampire, Sada gives us the Earth Rod, which is needed to access the lower floors of the Cavern of Earth. But he had to give the Star Ruby over to the giant that was blocking their path in Giant's Cave. Suiko is again getting very unlucky here, but he is taking out these Pisco Demons really quickly. They are a random encounter that can be here on the third basement floor of Cavern of Earth. And unfortunately for him, if he does happen to encounter them, they are unrunnable here. So there's no feedback in this game. If you get into an encounter with an enemy that won't let you run, you can keep trying to run for as long as you want. You simply just won't be able to run away from enemies. So if you recognize that, it's in your best interest to just quickly take them out with whatever is the best way to take them out. So we have access to what? Vyra and Thundara on our Black Mage at this point. We have the Judgment Staffs in our inventory if we need to use that, and we also have some of our melee characters with Barbarian Swords. So we have a choice of several options to take them out, depending on which enemies we're running into. Alright, so Chris has opened up a bit of a lead here because he's now on his second trip through Earth Cave, and this time he's got to go through all 5 floors. Suiko right now is making his way to Giant's Cave to go pick up the Earth Rod. So he's probably a minute to a minute and a half behind at least right now. Possibly more. But again, that doesn't mean much at this point in time. There is plenty of time for both racers to essentially flip the lead on each other, as the encounter RNG can be very unkind to one or both racers, or neither. So this is a critical part for Chris right here. He's going to try to get through this very long third floor, trying to dodge as many encounters as possible, and really hoping he doesn't run into Pisco Demons, because those take the longest time for him to be able to deal with. So long as he avoids those and keeps moving at a pretty good pace, he should be okay. And Suiko's made it to Sage's Cave over here. He's going to pick up the Earth Rod, and then he's going to start working his way back towards to Earth Cave and try to catch up what he can to Chris right now. So Chris continues along here. He's getting close to the end of the third floor, but he's getting bat blocked here. So these bats can run around randomly and just block your path, and it's very annoying when they do that, but they're otherwise harmless. There's no out-of-bounds bat in this version either. So Chris makes his way to the 4th floor now. One of the other enemies they don't want to see right now are cockatrices, as cockatrices have a chance to petrify our party members. In the event of an ambush, if everybody is petrified, that could be a game over for one of our racers if they're just really unfortunate. But they do have gold needles to be able to recover that if they happen to get into combat and then get out without everybody getting petrified. Alright, Suiko is making his way over to Earth Cave. Chris is now on the final floor here and is ready to confront the first of the major bosses in this game, known as the Lich. And here you're going to almost certainly see him take a safety save. And he's also going to heal up his mages. Not strictly necessary for this fight, but it sets them up better for an upcoming grind section that will be coming up after this. So Chris takes a save here, which is a wise move, as Lich can open with a powerful magic spell called Blizzara, which does more damage than our characters have health at this point in the run. So even if we were fully healed, it could easily kill our characters. But thanks to the power of the Barbarian Swords, we're hoping to two-shot Lich just like Chris did. If you're unlucky, the Lich can outspeed some of your melee characters, or your characters could do less than the 1200 damage it needs to kill Lich and take him out. And if that's the case, you're just kind of at the mercy of whether or not Lich is going to cast Blizzara or do something else. All right, Suiko is on to B2. Has 3 more floors to go. Chris, meanwhile, is stuck in a little mini cutscene here. This is an addition to this version. So once he's defeated Lich, the Earth Crystal lights up here. And then we're shown a little cutscene here where one of the bonus dungeons called Sunken Shrine opens up. The entrance of this is actually right back towards the start of the game. But again, this is some bonus content that we're just not going to be utilizing in this version, as there's no benefits to really going in there in terms of speeding up this particular category. There's a couple other categories of this particular version of the game. I believe the other ones are called All Dungeons and All Bosses, as some of the bonus content that was added in this are recreations of popular bosses from Final Fantasies 3, 4, 5, and 6 in the 4 bonus dungeons. So if you go into the Earthgift Shrine and you were to go through it, you would find the 4 bosses from the World of Darkness in Final Fantasy 3 recreated here. You'd have to fight them one at a time. Suiko's getting really unlucky here because he's getting a lot of Pisco Demons, which is slowing him down. So he's just kind of falling further and further behind Chris right now. Suiko's getting ambushed over here. Chris is having a little trouble running away from this group of Sahagins. So they're both getting a little unlucky right now. And Chris is actually just going to opt to take these enemies out. We're going to see what happens with Suiko as well. So Suiko's trying to hit the home run where he runs away. And it looks like he got it. So we got out of that combat a little bit more, but both of them got slowed down quite a bit on that. And here's are the cockatrices that can be really dangerous if you're unlucky. So Suiko has made it to the final floor now, so now it's his turn to take on Lich once he gets there. Another ambush is going to slow him down, so he's getting really unfortunate luck right now, and that's just kind of putting him further and further behind Chris. It's going to be, at some point it might be too much to make up, but it's still a little early in the run. The expected run time for those that have just tuned in is somewhere between roughly an hour and 30 minutes or 2 hours, depending on the runner skill and some measure of RNG. Alright, so now that Chris has has defeated Lich, we can make our way over here to Crescent Lake, and there is a sage over here that will reward us with the canoe, which is a key item we need to access another couple of key locations. And that's very true. There is still Ice Cave as well. Ice Cave is one of the most dangerous places in this particular run. Still, even in this category. Oh, here we see Blizzara on Suiko's side. So that is the unfortunate reality of trying to fight Lich in this category. But that's why we take a safety save there. Because that can be a thing. Chris, meanwhile, is picking up some additional items for glitching over here in Crescent while we're there. Suiko's going to take on Lich here, and he's not going to leave anything a chance. He wants to make sure that this is going to end in one round, so he's going to use a flare. He's going to use a Judgment Staff to add a little extra damage just in case the warrior low rolls here. It looks like the warrior did actually low roll there, so that guaranteed that the fight ended in one round before Lich could respond. So Suiko is past Lich at this point. They're both with one of the 4 crystals they need to finish the game. So the ultimate objective is they have to defeat each of the 4 elemental fiends. One's located in 4 different dungeons in the game. The first one they have to fight is Lich, as they don't have access to the other ones until after they've defeated Lich. At this point in the run, the path actually opens up a bit. They can opt to go to any of the other ones in any order that they want to, but you will most likely see them take on Merilith, Kraken, and Tiamat in roughly the intended order of the original game. So Suiko's watching that little cutscene where Earthgift Shrine opens up again. Just not going to be visiting that, but it's a nice little reminder for those that are playing this game casually that this bonus dungeon has opened up. Now that we have the canoe, we can just go right over the Crescent Lake there and make a quick backtrack to our ship. And then Chris is going to head to Ice Cave now. So this is probably the other most dangerous part of this run coming up for him. So he's just got to navigate this waterway here to get over there. Not particularly complicated, but it is possible to get lost here if you're just not familiar with it. Looks like both runners have actually been doing very well in terms of navigating the world and just knowing where they need to go to this point. So they haven't gotten very lost, or at least not lost for more than a few steps. And Chris is done sailing over here, so now he's just going to walk into the ice cave, and I guess we'll see if he takes a save or not, because this could be a dangerous area. Right off the bat, he's going to take a save, which is a smart move for a race, especially. Okay, that could have been a particularly dangerous group, especially if it was an ambush there. 9 enemies that can either put your characters to sleep or petrify you before you even have a chance to respond. So once again, he gets another preemptive here, very fortunate. But he's going to either see those enemies, he could also see white dragons, he could also see the Pisco demons, which we saw previously in Marsh Cave and Earth Cave. And once again, they're unrunnable here, so he's going to have to just take care of them here, if he happens to encounter them. So Suiko has made his way to Crescent Lake in the meantime and is picking up some additional items for glitching. And then he's going to go pick up his canoe. In particular, they're buying a Mithril Axe and they're buying a Mithril Dagger here. Or no, that's not right. Mithril Axe and Mithril Gloves, I want to say? Yeah, they're going to turn them into... They're going to turn the Mithril Gloves into a weapon known as the Lust Dagger, which adds another post-game item that adds 20 points of agility to any character that it's equipped on. And they're going to put a piece of armor on called the Black Garb. The Black Garb adds 10 points of agility for each copy that is equipped on their character. So for going to put 3 copies each on the Thief, the Black Mage, and the White Mage, giving them a 30 agility point bonus for each of them, and then agility. Then he's also going to put a Lust Dagger on probably both of the mages, giving them an additional 20 agility each. So they have so much agility that they're just going to be outspeeding a lot of the enemies from this point on. And it does a decent enough damage for them to be able to attack and use them as physical attacks as well. So Chris has begun to navigate here in Ice Cave, and he has to reach this point and then drop down through a cracked tile on the ice to get over to the Evil Eye. And he's going to try to avoid getting as nasty encounters as he can. So we got the Mind Flayers there, which can be dangerous, especially if they ambush you, but they're not particularly dangerous otherwise. They do have the ability to cast Mind Blast on the party, which can paralyze everyone, and their attacks also have a chance of instant KOing someone. But unless they happen to get you in an ambush situation, they don't tend to be very dangerous in here. Chris getting slowed down by a group of Pisco demons while Suiko is making his way over to Ice Cave here. There's certainly a chance for Suiko to make up some time here if he can get some better luck. He's been getting some rotten encounter luck for quite a while here. Certainly worse than Chris has been having. And that has opened up a gap for Chris. Suiko getting another ambush here. Enemy's not super dangerous, it's just wasting his time, which is unfortunately a little more important to speedrun here, especially a race. So Chris is here and is fighting the Evil Eye. And this is going to be the first and only real grinding section that you're going to be seeing in this particular run. So we've been setting up our characters so that the Evil Eye would kill them off, particularly the melee characters at this point, to facilitate an experience grind for the mages. We want to try to get the mages to roughly level 18 at this point in the run, so that they will be able to purchase and equip some magic spells by a certain point later in the run. They need to be level 19, and they need to be class changed in order for them to pick up and use Healara, Haste, and what's the other one I'm thinking of? Healara, Haste, and Teleport. Teleport's the one they specifically need. So the easiest way that they do this is they basically refrain from healing their Warrior and Thief for quite a while up to this point in the run. And they will slowly lose their health just getting attacked by regular enemies over the course of this. And then they're trying to set it up so that when they encounter the Evil Eye here for the first time, they just wait until Evil Eye casts Thundara and leave their Warrior and Thief at a low enough HP total that they'll die to Thundara, but make sure that their mages have enough HP to survive it. And then at that point, they're going to be just doing this grind here section against the Evil Eye, because the Evil Eye gives a great amount of experience for very little effort at this point. So just repeat the fight here, because they can walk back and forth, and each time they step on this tile here, it will force an encounter against one Evil Eye. And with 2 characters down, the other characters are basically getting double the experience they would be compared to if all 4 characters were up and running. So they're leveling twice as fast as they would. So Suiko has actually made it all the way to the grind spots. They're in the same spot right now, but Chris is probably a minute or a minute and a half ahead, just because he's been doing the grind to this point. And then, most importantly, he's picked up the Levistone, so he needs this to be able to access the airship later on. If he gets to this point and forgets to pick it up, that's a big mistake that would cost him a lot. Because he would have to, if he forgets it and he walks out of here, he's going to have to go through the whole dungeon to go pick it up again, including another fight against Evil Eye. It's pretty much one of the biggest mistakes you can make in this category. And it's something that almost every runner of this category has made at some point, either while learning or even occasionally an absent-minded run, you might forget to pick it up. It's especially important that they don't forget to do that, and both characters did pick it up in this case. So Chris has just made his way out of Ice Cave, and so he's through that part. Suiko, in the meantime, is going to be just finishing up the grind here. So again, they want to get their mages to level 18, roughly at this point, and then the experience they pick up along the path from here until they fight Merilith in Mount Gulg should be enough to get their mages to level 19. They will, once that happens, they'll go shopping immediately after that and pick up the spells they need to help them for the rest of the run. They're probably about halfway through the run at this point. So Suiko is level 17 on his White Mage. You can also leave them down, like, at level 17 and try to get more from unrunnable enemies that he might run into this. So what is Total Cast? Total Cast is just the name for our particular tournament. This is a tournament for Final Fantasy for PSP, specifically the any percent category of it. This is the 4th tournament we've held this year. The first one was in, I believe, January of 2016. We held the second one January of 2017. Third one January of 2018, and then after a bit of a hiatus, we're holding this one, the 4th one this year. This is the 2nd time Chris has participated, because he participated in the 3rd one last year. And Suiko is actually new to the tournament, has not participated before. Chris has made his way now to the desert and has brought the Levistone with him, so that will give him the airship, which is now the fastest method of movement. We'll be ditching the ship from this point on and just using the airship instead to get around. So the airship moves 4 times faster than walking on the overworld and twice as fast as the boat. And Yoshi in the chat is absolutely right. Chaos is what happens when you agree to run this game. So now they have to remember, if they know how to navigate, where they're trying to go from this point on. This can be a little bit more challenging to navigate the airship due to the angle of the display when you're running around with the airship. And it also depends on your familiarity with the world map at that point. Looks like Suiko has made his way out of Ice Cave, and is just going to be making his way to go pick up the airship in the desert in the meantime. Chris is parked way to the east of Citadel of Trials, as this is the closest landing spot for the airship to be able to reach it, and he's just going to have to take a long walk on the overworld to get over there. You could optionally also sail to it using the boat, but you're subject to random encounters if you do that on the sea. So it's you can go either way with that, and you can either sail to it or you can fly to it. Flying to it is generally faster, though, due to the faster overall speed of movement. And there's no encounters while you're flying on the airship. But unfortunately, this is one of the hard-to-reach locations that you can use with that. There's another one over by the town of Lufenia. You have to park quite a ways away from that and then walk. So Suiko's got his airship coming up right here. He's maybe a minute and a half behind right now. Chris has entered the Citadel here. So he has to talk to this NPC first, because if he doesn't, he can't advance through the door in the upper left corner. Or actually, he just can't use the throne. He can go through the door. So now he's going to enter a bit of a teleporter maze here. So he'll enter each of these rooms and take the teleporter here. And in rooms with more than one teleporter, he has to make sure he takes the right one, or else he's going to be ported right back to the start of the floor and have to repeat this particular floor all over again. So some of these rooms only have one teleporter, and there's no option, there's no choice about which way to go. But some of them have more than one, which attempts to trick you and get you to go the wrong way. So runners just have to memorize this and get familiar with it. Looks like Chris has navigated it first try. Perfectly fine. Suiko looks like he's catching up a little bit, though. I say that, and then he gets ambushed here. So meanwhile, Chris has made it to the final floor here on this particular dungeon, and he's actually going to be opting to... He's run into an encounter with nightmares here. This is a forced encounter when you walk on this tile, and he actually got 2 of them. It can often be difficult to run from them, so it's usually just recommended that you fight and kill them, especially because you want to make sure you also get enough experience to make sure that your mages get to level 19 at this point. So he has to go and detour and pick up this chest, which has a healing staff in it. We're going to use that for a glitch coming up. And then once they do that, they have to backtrack and continue on to the end of the floor, but that requires them to go over that nightmare tile one more time. So they have to fight. If they opt to pick up that healing staff, they have to fight 2 fights against nightmares. And they also have to fight at least 1 fight against dragon zombies, which are a trap tile right at the end of this floor. Chris opts to pick up gauntlets. He'll be using this for a glitch to turn it into a weapon called the Golden Staff, and he might also be using it in combat to cast Thundara. It looks like they're using slightly different routes. Chris is using what's known as the Lust Dagger White Mage route, where he's loading up his White Mage to use as much intelligence as possible so that she can handle any enemy encounters that are otherwise problematic to run from. And it looks like Suiko is using the most recent route that has been developed called the Black Mage Lust Dagger route, which takes advantage of a new item that was discovered for glitching called the Sage's Staff. And in his case, he will be purchasing spells rather than using combat items to take out enemies that he might run into. They both functionally do the same thing. They just do it with slightly different equipment loadouts on different characters and with slightly different spells to do it. So in this case, Chris is going to be using combat items like the Mage's Staff, the Gauntlets, or the Black Robe in his inventory to be casting Vyra, Thundara, Blizzara, respectively, to deal with any enemy encounters that he needs to deal with. And Suiko, on the other hand, has opted to do the Black Mage route, where he picks up the spells directly from the shops instead and forgoes the combat items. They're both very overall similar routes, they just have slight differences. So Chris has picked up the Rat's Tail, and he's going to take it over here to the Cave of Bahamut. and class change, and this is going to be the last requirement he needs, other than level 19, to be able to pick up all the spells he's going to need for the rest of the run. Suiko, meanwhile, has finished Citadel, and it just has to walk back to his ship and then navigate his way over to Cave of Bahamut again. So the gap seems to be narrowing a little bit. Suiko is also intentionally leaving Dan dead at this point. Probably to feed more experience over here now. This is a little bit of a dangerous situation for Suiko over here. He ran into a sandworm. The sandworms can cast earthquakes. And if they're very unlucky, it can actually instant kill everyone that's currently alive. So why can't they land the airship right next to the tower they're at? There's no landing spots, unfortunately. The closest landing spot is where you saw them actually land. They can actually sail to a more direct location next to it, but that risks them getting enemy encounters on the sea, and traveling over the sea is only half as fast as traveling through the air. The advantage of traveling through the air is you don't get any encounters while you're in the air. Oh, Chris has got the unrunnable, the unfortunate unrunnable. Let's see if he realizes it. Looks like he does. This is one of the trickiest encounters to recognize, but he's actually very quickly identified it and has dealt with it. That's one of the rare encounters you can get on the overworld in this section. If you happen to see that combination of enemies, the Ogre Mage and Hellhound, it's an unrunnable formation. It's probably the trickiest formation for new runners to do it, because it's an infrequent one, and it can look like other encounters early on. You can just see like only Hellhounds, and it's still considered the same formation. So if they're not familiar with the fact that you can do that, it might throw them off. They might try to run away unnecessarily. So once Chris was all set, he actually headed over to the Desert Caravan and purchased a bottled fairy, which is the same as you do in the regular game, but a new shop opens up after you buy the bottled fairy with a couple of combat items you can use, specifically tonics. Oh, we got the NPC block over here on Chris. That's really unfortunate. So this guy's just slowing him down here. He's going to have to push him out of the way. He can optionally also enter that item shop there and reset his position if he knows what he's doing. That's not a very common occurrence where he gets in the way. So anyways, Chris and Suiko, oh, here we go with Suiko, also got the very unfortunate unrunnable formation over here. But it looks like they've correctly identified it, and they're just going to take it out. Yeah, it's more of a backup strategy, just in case the guy gets in your way, to enter the item shop to reset his position, so he won't be in the way. It's more of like an advanced strategy that you have to just kind of learn it over time as an option. So as soon as Suiko enters, Gaia here, bottled fairy he got, flies off to a little spring in the back, and we have to go and reconnect with him in the little spring in the back of the town and pick up a key item called Oxyale. This is a key item we need to be able to progress to the Sunken Shrine later in the run. But meanwhile, now that they're all set, Chris is here, has detoured quickly over to Mount Gulg, the second of the 4 main dungeons. At the bottom here is going to be Marilith. This is a pretty quick dungeon, and it's usually a very quick dungeon because you'll see Chris walking on these lava tiles here. Every time he walks on a lava tile, he takes a point of damage for each party member that's currently standing, but the advantage of doing that is that he can't risk any enemy encounters on those lava tiles. So it's actually to your benefit to walk on as many of them as possible, because that reduces the encounter rate usually pretty significantly, and it's entirely possible to go through the entire dungeon without getting a single random encounter. It's more likely to get a few, but you definitely could go the entire way through. And here we go. Suiko as well is going to enter in. He's just going to take a quick safety save here. Hopefully this is not the unrunnable for Chris. Looks like he's okay. And they're taking a safety save here just in case, because there's a risk of leaving your characters a little too low and then walking on too many lava tiles. And if you get into combat after that happens, you could start a combat with like 1 HP on each of your characters, and if it's an ambush, that could be extremely deadly. A lot of runners, you might just see YOLO this and see what happens. But if they're not sure, there's no reason not to take a safety save. So this is a really unfortunate ambush for Suiko here. Okay, so that's a gaze attack and KO characters here. But he luckily got away. Chris, meanwhile, has made it all the way to Marilith here, and his strategy is going to be the same pretty much as Lich. He's going to try to just attack with his melee characters that have Barbarian Swords on because they do significantly more damage than the other characters who only have Lust Daggers equipped, and try to take her down in 1 round. It looks like it wasn't 1 round, it looks like it was just 2 rounds, but again, she's not particularly dangerous to us here. Many of the elemental fiends are not anywhere near as dangerous in this particular category as compared to their counterparts in the NES or other versions of the game, as we can just take them out so quickly that it minimizes the amount of damage they can do. So here we go. Suiko is really, really unlucky here, but he got away with 1 HP on 1 character. So he's living on the edge right here, but he's probably good because he's nearly to Lich, or he's nearly to Marilith right now. There's no more lava tiles from this point on, so he's going to res his characters and get them back up on their health totals. So it looks like he's navigated that successfully. He really just wants to make sure his characters have at least probably 150 HP each to survive the worst attack that Marilith can use, which is Fyra. Chris, meanwhile, having completed that and making sure that his characters are level 19 is now going to work. He's now going to go on a slight detour to pick up some spells. In particular, he's going to go first here over to Elfheim and pick up Haste and Blizzara for his Black Mage. Or in this case, he's just going to pick up Haste, because that's right, because he's using the White Mage route. He doesn't need to purchase Blizzara for his Mage. He already has a Black Robe combat item in his inventory that he can use to do the same purpose. And then he's going to go over here to Melmond. In the meantime, Suiko is fighting Marilith, and looks like he got her down in 1 round. So looks like he's slowly catching up here. Chris is going to pick up Healara here and teleport. So Healara is going to be needed chiefly to speed up healing his characters at this point, because the combat animation is considerably quicker for casting that than it is for spamming potions in the menu. And additionally, it's going to be the key role that the White Mage plays during the final boss fight against Chaos. And then he also picked up Teleport, which he needed a level 19 class change Black Wizard in order to be able to purchase and use that. So he'll use that to basically go back 1 floor in a dungeon, or in a single floor town or dungeon. It will just take them right out. Chris is getting an unrunnable formation here on the overworld. This Ice Gigas Winterwolf combination is unrunnable here. That's another question. How long are these matches usually? Depending on the runner's skill and the luck of the encounters that they get, this can take anywhere from 1.5 hours to 2 hours. You're probably safely looking at least 90 minutes for this run. 90 minutes to 1 hour 40 is probably more common for most people, but some races can go a little bit longer than that, or a little bit shorter. I believe the current record for any match in one of our tournaments, I believe, is in 1:25, and that's an uncommonly good time. I mean, the top runners will probably get times closer to their top times will probably closest to be 1:27 on average, and most runners will probably end up around 1:30. At least some of the top runners. Some of the runners that are learning in this category, some of them are new to this category and have never played it before. May take a little bit longer. So Suiko has gone and purchased his spells, and he also picked up Blizzara here, so due to his slight strategy change over compared to Chris, he's going to be picking up Blizzara as an extra spell here, and then Haste. So they're both basically merged at this point. There's not really much in the way of divergences. They're just going to be following the rest of the round. So they have to go here through the Sunken Shrine first, and they have to first go up to the top floor and pick up the Rosetta Stone up here, as they're going to need this to be able to access the Mirage Tower. Is it Mirage Tower? No, Lufenia. Okay, they have to translate that in order to be able to converse with the NPCs in Lufenia, which will get them the key item to Mirage Tower. So it's part of that sequence. Chris is getting an unrunnable formation here of ghosts, which are vulnerable to fire, so he's just going to use his Mage Stamp, which casts Fire. Suiko, on the other hand, has just entered Sunken Shrine and is getting pretty close right now. He's still roughly 1 to 1.5 minutes behind at the moment. And again, the lead can change pretty significantly, pretty quickly in this run. If one person is to get significantly worse RNG in terms of the encounters that they fight, this lead can flip. So this is not a safe lead for Chris right now, but he is in the lead. In the meantime, they are picking up a key item. Well, they're picking up first the Rosetta Stone, and then they're going to make their way next to Kraken. Along the way, they're going to detour and pick up a light axe from either the 4th floor chest, or there's also one on the second last floor as well, and they're going to use that to turn it into one more piece of glitch gear called the Survival Vest. So this is probably the most powerful piece of gear in terms of defensive gear that they're going to be picking up throughout the run. So this gives them a huge, defensive bonus, evasion bonus, and on top of that, it adds 15 points of agility for each copy that they manage to glitch onto each of their characters. And then in most cases, they're going to be glitching at least 3 copies on all of their characters. They might be glitching only 2 on the White Mage for Chris, and I think only 2 for Suiko on his Black Mage. So that will give him enough intelligence and agility between all the glitched equipment he has on him to make sure that he acts earliest in the turn order and does enough damage with his spells or the combat items to make sure that they can kill off enemies as quickly as possible. So Chris has done his glitching. Suiko has just reached the Rosetta Stone here, so he's going to use the teleport here after he makes sure he has enough MP. And each time he casts teleport, it's going to take him back 1 floor here. So he's going to have to cast it 2 times to be able to go back to the floor which he first entered the Sunken Shrine, and then he's going to have to head in the opposite direction to head towards Kraken. Chris is getting an unrunnable Sahagan Prince Chief combo over here. So his best way to deal with that is to use Gauntlets, which cast Thundara. Thundara has a very short combat animation, especially compared to the Judgment Staff that we picked up very early in the game, so it saves quite a few seconds to use that compared to using the Judgment Staff in combat. Suiko's just running away from some airborne sharks. They're just slightly hovering over the ground. Although, technically we're supposed to be underwater here, as you need the Oxyel to be able to reach this location. And Chris has reached the final floor. Suiko's only 1 or 2 floors behind him. So Suiko is picking up the light axe here on the 2nd floor. Chris opted to do that on the 4th floor instead. And then it looks like Suiko did a slight movement error here. But what he's actually doing is he's approaching this upcoming chest specifically from the right side, because if he approaches it from either the left side or from underneath, there's a forced encounter that he's going to get if he steps on that tile. So by picking it up on the right side, there is no encounter there, and he can avoid that. So once again, they're just trying to set up their characters with as much agility and intelligence gear as possible. In particular, he only really wants intelligence gear set up for his White Mage for the final fight here for Suiko, and he also wants a combination of agility and intelligence gear for his Black Mage, so that can do as much as possible with his spells, should he need to know. And it looks like Suiko accidentally walked over the forced encounter tile. Luckily for him, this is a runnable encounter, but he didn't mean to do that, I'm sure. Kraken, on the other hand, is a gigantic pushover in this version. We have too much defensive power for him to be able to do anything near enough in this. So, and Kraken has no particularly damaging moves that we can use. His most powerful attack is his physical attack, and it doesn't do anywhere near enough with the defensive gear we have glitched. So Suiko is getting a Sahagin Prince Chief encounter, and he's using Thundara that he picked up in Elfheim to take care of them. Suiko's just getting some terrible luck here. Suiko actually could have probably used Thundara there, as even though the ghosts are technically vulnerable to fire, Thundara has a slightly faster animation and does enough damage at that point to kill them once you have gotten the glitch gear here in Sunken Shrine. So that's a slight mistake, but he's also getting really unlucky here with this water elemental. So there's basically 3 unrunnable formations you don't want to see in the Sunken Shrine. You don't want to see Sahagin Prince and Chief, because that requires you to stop and use Thundara. You don't want to see Ghost, which requires you to stop and use either Fyra or Thundara, depending on your gear. And then there's water elementals. Depending on how many show up, you either have to take them out with barbarian swords, or you can opt to use Thundara or Blizzara or a Black Robe. As you might think they would normally be vulnerable to thunder, but they're actually vulnerable to ice in this game. And then Suiko's just finishing up, it looks like, Sunken Shrine right now. Meanwhile, Chris has moved on to Waterfall here, as he's got to pick up one more key item, and also one piece of equipment in a treasure room that's all the way at the end of this very windy cavern. So Suiko's just getting ready for Kraken, who should be pretty much a pushover here. The general strategy is he wants to attack with the melees and do 1800 damage. He can optionally also make his mages attack if he wants, if he thinks that's going to be enough to get them over the hump and make sure it's going to be one round fight. Not required, but it's totally up to the runner if they want to do that. Chris, meanwhile, has made it to the treasure room over here, and the first step into this room is an automatic forced encounter with a group of 9 enemies usually. And Chris is not going to risk it. This is actually a runnable encounter, but he's just going to opt to kill them. Then he has to do 2 things in this room. He has to make sure he talks to the robot here and pick up the warp cube, because he needs that to be able to enter the flying fortress. And additionally, he also wants to pick up the ribbon in the chest here, as it's conveniently located in the same room here. So he's going to be glitching this into a weapon known as the Gigant Axe, and then we're actually not going to be using the Gigant Axe directly. We're going to put a copy of the Gigant Axe in our inventory, and then start using that to glitch additional ribbons. So we don't need to go and pick up multiple ribbons in this version of the game from the different locations they're located at. We can just pick up one ribbon, glitch it into its corresponding item in the weapon table, which is known as the Gigant Axe, and then we can use that item once it's in our inventory to essentially reverse glitch and make multiple copies of the ribbon and put it on our characters. And the ribbon reduces elemental damage by 50% and grants immunity to almost all status effects in the game. So it's a very, very powerful piece of equipment that will be key, especially in the final fight against Chaos. But once they have that, their characters are more or less invulnerable to any status attacks, and only attacks which do a large amount of damage can really hurt us from this point forward, or we get really unlucky with some other things. I mean, enemies such as Mind Flayers can still technically do like a one-hit KO move on us, as the ribbon does not provide protection from it, but you're not going to be seeing them too often. So once Chris was all set with that, he worked his way back to his airship and flew with the Rosetta Stone back here to Melmond. Once he gets here to Melmond, he's got to talk to Dr. Oon, this NPC in the upper right corner of the town, who can translate the rune for us. Once that's done, he can warp out and proceed over to Lufenia and actually converse with the NPCs there. If he tries to go there earlier, he wastes a bunch of time, because he's going to get down there and then realize that the NPCs are talking gibberish and they won't hand over the chime key item that he needs. Suiko is working his way through the Waterfall Cave here. Chris is getting the unrunnable formation here on this walk to Lufenia. This is one of the worst times. This could be one of the worst locations for losing time here. It's there's a lot of forests on this walk to Lufenia. There's not a very close landing spot for the airship, so he has to unfortunately park a ways away and then walk over this area. And there's just a lot of forests here. Inside of these forests tend to be a lot of Minotaur zombies, which are unrunnable. You might see them also with trolls, whether they see them by themselves or with trolls, or both formations are unrunnable. So he's going to have to take care of those, and the easiest way to do that is with his mage's staff. If Suiko sees them, he'll be using a fire rat instead, as it serves the same purpose. So Suiko gets onto the forced encounter tile over here and opts to run away. It's usually not too hard to run away from that encounter, but if you want to just take it safe, that's totally up to you and kill them. Suiko picks up the warp cube here. Unfortunately, the robot is standing in the way, so he's going to have to push him out of the way in order to pick up the ribbon in the chest behind him. Oh, and he gets an unlucky encounter on the one step that was left. So that's a little unfortunate for Suiko. Chris is still holding a pretty solid lead at the moment. But Chris has made his way to Lufenia here, and he has to talk to this very specific NPC here in the corner in order to get the chime. So once he has the chime and the warp cube, he has what he needs to be able to go through Flying Fortress, the Mirage Tower, and then Flying Fortress in sequence and take on Tiamat, which is the last of the 4 fiends that they'll be fighting. So Chris getting a couple more Minotaur zombies here. He doesn't want to see too many of these because that just slows him down. So he goes out of Waterfall, heading to his ship, and he's got to head now to Melman to translate the Rosetta Stone. So he's trailing as quickly as he can right now. But unfortunately, he's probably going to need some help from RNG on Chris's side, or he's going to need an extraordinary run of very few encounters in order to be able to catch up at this point, because he's going to start to run out of time to catch up. So here goes Chris into the Mirage Tower. Thankfully, in this particular run, in this category, you don't really need to pick up any items here. So we can just go straight through all 3 floors here. The first floor is pretty much into a door, out another door, into the stairs immediately. And then on the second floor is the most complicated of these. You have to just take a very counterclockwise path to the upper left corner, and then you can duck back in towards the staircase down to the 3rd floor. But the encounter right here can be pretty ridiculous at times. So this could be a very frustrating area to go to, depending on if you're unlucky or not. Suiko looks like he might be a little lost right now. Yeah, I think he's trying to locate Melmond. That or he's trying to locate Lufenia. There is an in-game map you can access. If you hold, I believe it's select and circle. You might see runners use that, but most probably do not use that. Chris made his way through Mirage Tower, and here, as soon as you enter this particular last room here, there's a blue dragon guarding it. So he has to take that out and then proceed with the warp cube up to the Flying Fortress. So this is going to be 5 more floors that he has to work his way through to get to Tiamat. Meantime, it's like Suiko has found out where he's going. He's made it to Lufenia. Just gonna deal with these Minotaur zombies that he's running into right now. And again, in Flying Fortress here, we don't need any items, because once again, we've picked up this glitched equipment, so we can just make a beeline straight to Tiamat. The runners could pick up the Scourge spell, which is the equivalent of Bane in this version. They can pick that up at the same location they pick up Teleport, but it's usually just going to be quicker to fight the enemy, or fight the bosses straight up, because it tends to only take 3 or 4 hits to take many of these the elemental fiends down. So here, Chris is on the 5th floor. This is where Warmech can spawn. We're hoping to see some Warmechs every so often. They're not very common in the tournament, but they do show up every so often. This is the only floor in the game where they appear. They can also appear in some additional bonus content that's in here, but we're unfortunately not going to see that in this run. So Chris unfortunately got an encounter right on the step before talking to the orb where Tiamat is. Suiko, on the other hand, is still just trying to make his way through. He's trying to make his way back to the airship after having gone through Lufenia. So for Chris, Tiamat has the end of the Fiends start to have more and more HP as you go down here. So this particular one has 2,400 that he has to chew through, and if he hastes his thief, it's going to go through real quick like that. So Suiko's pretty much almost the entire dungeon behind right now. That's quite a few minutes. Chris has opened a pretty comfortable lead here. So with the defeat of Tiamat, Chris is all set to go head to the final dungeon in the Chaos Shrine. So he just has to let this short cutscene play out, and then he can move on. He can still encounter Warmech if he gets an encounter on one of these tiles before he reaches the teleporter at the back of the room. Suiko's just working his way through Mirage Tower right now. He's going to have to start getting some luck here, or Chris is going to have to start getting some really bad luck in order for this to flip around right now. Alright, no Warmech for Chris today. We'll have to see if Suiko has any luck with it. So Chris makes it back to his airship, and he just has to sail over to the Chaos Shrine. We don't need any supplies or anything, he can just head directly there. He has everything he needs to be able to finish the run at this point. And it looks like he doesn't know specifically where to go, but he's found his own way to navigate there. Yeah, Chaos can definitely still flip this around. This isn't over until Chaos is down. This is not over. But Chris looks to be in pretty good control right now. So Suiko begins the ascent up Flying Fortress. So he just has to get up the 5 floors, and he can just beeline it straight to Tiamat. The only enemies he really doesn't want to see on these first couple floors are Evil Eyes, which are the same enemy we saw in Ice Cave, as those are unrunnable. We do want to see a Warmech, but it's only on the 5th floor. So here we go with Chris. Chris has begun the final dungeon here. He's going to heal up first. And it looks like he's also going to take a safety save, which is a smart play considering he's currently in the lead right now. White dragons and other enemies abound all over this Chaos Shrine in the past. So these purple worms are unrunnable, and they typically don't take enough damage from a Judgment Staff, so it's usually just faster to melee them. Suiko's on the final floor here. We'll see if he gets a Warmech while this is going on. Chris, meanwhile, just has to make his way first to the Death Eye location and take him on. And he's onto the 3rd floor. So as soon as he enters the room in the center, he's going to be forced into an encounter with Death Eye. Fortunately, this is, again, a pushover in this particular version thanks to the power of the Barbarian Sword. He can just take him out in one melee attack. Doesn't look like we saw a Warmech yet. But thankfully, this is only the first match of the tournament, so you guys are going to have plenty of opportunities over the next month or two to see Warmech make an appearance. So Suiko is just going to straight up fight Tiamat. Tiamat's going to do Thunderbolt here. It looks like that's going to probably cost him his Black Mage. Oh, this is a nasty little ambush over here on Chris's side. Especially because there's 4 of these enemies over here. Luckily for him, only one of them opted to use Blaze. The Blaze animation can waste a lot of time here. But Suiko's all set with Tiamat, and is also basically all set at this point to go head into the final dungeon. Chris is going to run into a group of dragon zombies here. These are unrunnable as well and vulnerable to fire. They are also undead. We don't really have any undead items other than the Light Axe, and Fyra slash the Mage's Staff usually does more damage than the Light Axe would do at this point. So Chimera Rios Nothing special for Chris. He would prefer to see that than the other ones, because the other types of encounters he can run into there tend to be unrunnable. So this is one of the more dangerous encounters he can get here. White dragons. They are runnable, but if you fail to run, this is what can happen here. This Ice Storm attack wastes some time, and if enough of them do that, could put him in a very bad shape. So now Chris has a little bit of a dilemma here. Does he risk running again, or is he going to try to kill them? So he's not going to mess around. He's going to just make sure he uses the Judgment Staff and kills them. Because if he tried to run and failed, that probably could have cost him his lead and even this matchup instantly. So he's trying to preserve his lead as much as possible. Chris just has to work his way through this floor. There tend to be white dragons and purple worms mostly on this floor. Both he doesn't really want to see, because the white dragons can be very dangerous and could wipe him, and the purple worms just usually slow him down. So he's onto the first of the 5 basement floors here. Each of these is themed after the 4 fiends that we have seen previously, so this is going to be Lich's floor. You're going to see many enemies that we previously saw in the Cavern of Earth on our way to the Lich. And then we'll be fighting a refight with Lich at the very end of the floor. And notably, this is not a one-time fight. This is a forced encounter that happens on a specific tile. Actually, there's 4 tiles all surrounding that staircase that you see on the screen. If he walks on any of those tiles, he triggers a fight with Lich. If he happens to walk the wrong way afterwards, he's going to actually have to repeat the fight. So he wants to avoid that as much as possible. This is probably one of the most dangerous points, though, in this particular run back here, because Lich can use Flare ability. He has the ability to cast the spell Flare, which is the same as what we've been using with the Judgment Staff earlier on. And if he does use that, it does a lot of damage and risks killing our party, especially if we fail to heal. Suiko, on the other hand, is getting a little unlucky over here, because these chimeras are not letting him run, and they're using these lengthy blaze animations to waste his time. But Chris tries to run away from fire elementals, which are not runnable here. That's just going to cost him a round of combat. These are kind of rare here. The second floor is now Marilith's floor, so he's going to see many fire enemies here. Suiko, on the other hand, is seeing green dragons on this floor, which are vulnerable to Blizzara, actually. I'm not sure if he knows that. Looks like he's opting to melee them instead. Lava worms on Chris's side are perfectly harmless. Green dragons can be a little dangerous if they take their turns earlier, because they can use a poison gas maneuver and do a bunch of damage to our characters. But they're getting, let's see, Chris is right now on B2. And Suiko is almost made his way. Suiko's a couple floors behind right now. So Chris here, the refight with Marilith. Once again, she's kind of a pushover here. Her most dangerous attack is Firaga, and she only has 3,200 HP in this form. So it's going to be a 2-round fight. This is Firaga right here. But that's pretty much the extent of her damage. So she's not likely to take us down again, or to hurt him again. And with the power of haste, she can take him down pretty quick. Suiko, on the other hand, is getting an unrunnable Ice Gigas Winter Wolf combo over here. Just a little unfortunate. He wants to use Fyra is what he really wants to do here, because that's going to be the quickest way to deal with him. Chris makes his way onto Kraken's floor now. This is probably the most confusing floor in terms of the layout, but it's really not something that confuses veteran runners of this particular category. But he didn't want to see these water elementals here, because this is another unrunnable formation that he's going to have to stop and take care of. And once again, he's just going to have to remember what item to use. He correctly selects the Black Robe here, which will cast Blizzara against them and take them down. Suiko was getting an unrunnable group of dragon zombies in the meantime. So Suiko is on the first floor. The next floor he'll be on Lich's floor. He'll be 2 floors back at the moment. It's like he's about 3 floors back right now. Chris makes his way to the refight with Kraken at the end of this floor here. Kraken, again, is not particularly dangerous, but he has a chance to spam Thundara in this particular fight. And Chris did not heal, so that might be enough to kill the Black Mage right now, not necessarily the other characters. But Kraken only has 3,600 in this location. With the power of haste and the Barbarian Sword, he can go down in 2 rounds usually. And then he's onto the final refight floor here with Tiamat, but he did not opt to heal, which could be a very dangerous move here. So he's going to have to hope that Tiamat does not spam some of his most powerful attacks here. Now he could 2-round this fight depending on how much damage he does, as Tiamat only has 5,500 HP in this location, but that usually necessitates 2 or 3 rounds of combat. It looks like he got away with it. That was kind of a dangerous situation to leave himself vulnerable to, but he did get away with it, so he's okay. He's on to the final fight. Suiko is unfortunately getting flared over here, and that could be very dangerous with the totals right now. I don't think he's going to die, but he's going to be very close. Oh, that was really close. Looks like Suiko's just gonna. Oh, is he not gonna squeeze through? He should be able to squeeze through now. That should be enough damage. That was a really close. He probably should have healed before that fight, or taken a save. But he should be okay. So now, Chris is doing his final glitch before the final fight here. So he's basically loading up on intelligence gear on his white mage and taking all the agility gear off. The goal here is he wants to make sure that she acts last in the combat order, and he's going to be using her for Hilara on every combat round. And then he's going to put Barbarian Swords and Ribbons on everyone else if they don't already have it, because they're going to be basically just hammering away at Chaos with Barbarian Swords. And he also took a safety save here just in case he has to reset or has a bad start. The first round is usually the most critical in terms of what can happen on this fight. He's trying to avoid taking too much damage on the opening round, either from a physical attack from Chaos or from Blaze, which is one of the most common moves that Chaos opens with. If you're following our tournament, notice that the players have been sorted into groups based on the many attacks that Chaos can do, specifically his special attacks. We've named a group for Blaze, Cyclone, Tsunami, and Earthquake, his 4 special moves, and additionally we've named one other group, Kiraja, which is the one move we do not want to see him use. If he uses Kiraja, that means he went very quickly through his spell order in this round, and it heals Chaos for 9999, which is half of his max HP, and typically if you see that, it tends to lengthen the fight by about a minute and a half because you have to chew through that again. Suiko is working his way through Kraken's floor. Chris, meanwhile, has been quietly setting up his party. So after we bought the bottled fairy from the shop, there was an additional shop that opened up in the same location where Chris picked up a couple of consumables from that shop known as a Giant's Tonic. So he can use that in combat on one character to raise their maximum HP by 200 for the duration of that combat. So typically at this point, if you're going through this run, it's possible for your Thief and your Black Mage to have relatively low HP totals compared to the Warrior and White Mage. And in an effort to increase your survivability, it's not a bad idea to open up this fight with Chaos by using Giant's Tonics to increase their max HP and then heal up as much as possible to keep them out of danger. Chris looks like he's in pretty good shape right now, though, to finish off Chaos. I don't know if this is a PB for him, but this looks like a very solid time. He's certainly in great shape right now. Although D is in a hurry to get out of that combat. He probably didn't mean to flee with his Black Mage on that, but accidentally selected flee instead of attack. But Chris looks like he's pretty much in hold X to win mode right now. So after the first 3 rounds of combat, the Black Mage usually just hastes the 2 melee characters and himself, and then after that, they just spend all their rounds attacking Chaos. And that usually takes him out in 6 or 7 rounds of combat. Chaos, meanwhile, is just cycling through as many attacks. They really shouldn't be hurting Chris too much at this point, because Chris has his party set up very well to be able to handle almost anything that happens. And Suiko has made his way to Tiamat's floor for the refight here. And there it is. That's GG for Chris. So he'll be the winner of this opening match here in the Total Chaos Tournament. But meanwhile, we'll focus on Suiko as he finishes up his run. So he's here on Tiamat now. He's got his ninja hasted, hopefully to get this down in 2 rounds. Looks like it's going to take 1 more round, but it's going to cost him his Black Mage, because that Thunderbolt's going to do too much damage with his setup. Okay, so Tiamat is down. So just the Chaos fight left for Suiko at this point. Suiko getting air elementals here. These are actually runnable. All the other elementals in the run are actually unrunnable, with one exception. There's a Water Naga Water Elemental combo that you can see in Sunken Shrine that's occasionally unrunnable. That's actually runnable. This match will be over after this one. I don't know about the stream. You would have to ask the organizers about that. So Suiko begins setting up for the final fight here. So he's going to heal up and make sure his mages are ethered, especially because he wants to put himself in good shape. His HP totals on his thief are pretty good. 290 max there, 245 for the black mages usually, and it's actually pretty good. He's just got to make sure that there's a ribbon and a barbarian sword on the black mage. And I didn't see his equipment set up on the white mage, but we'll be able to tell what happened probably right after that, and he takes a quick safety save there just to make sure he can recover in case of something going wrong. His party setup looked pretty good though. So we'll see what happens with the chaos fight here. All right, Suiko's going to, again, open with using Giant Tonics on his characters just to make sure that they have enough maximum HP to survive Chaos's strongest attacks. And his White Mage will be exclusively on healing duty, and his Black Mage will be hasting Thief Warrior, and then himself in sequence. And after that, they'll just be holding X to win. They'll be repeating attacks with the Warrior, Ninja, and Black Mage, and White Mage will just be healing. So this is the opening you really don't want to see, mostly because Blaze does a lot of damage to their characters, but specifically it wastes a lot of animation time to do so. But Suiko's party is in very good shape right now, so Suiko's just going to switch to attacking with his melee characters, and then continue hasting with the Black Mage, continue healing with the White Mage. That first round of combat is usually the most important in terms of what happens setting up this fight. If he can get through that successfully, he's usually in pretty good shape. Alright, and luckily for him, Chaos is using physical attacks. While they can do quite a lot of damage, they are very quick animations compared to many of his special attacks. So we want to see physical attacks where possible, because that usually means he's going as fast as he can. Here we saw Tsunami there. That's another long animation, does a lot of damage. Another physical here is pretty good for Suiko, so he should be in pretty good shape to end this pretty quickly. Should be another round or two max. Yeah, but Suiko's got this on lock right now, so there's no danger here. It's just a matter of time. There it is. And that's GG for Suiko there. Second place, but that's a solid showing for his very first tournament match. And he's so excited he started another run immediately. That's okay. Oh, according to what I'm hearing, that's a PB for Suiko. So that is an excellent job on his very first run in the tournament. So I don't know if we're doing interviews or not. I mean, I would love to get these guys in here just to talk about the match. Let's see what's going on here. Just a moment while I try to sort out and see if we're doing interviews or not. I mean, both runners did very well. Suiko held a very early lead for this, I think, up until Earth Cave, and at some point around there, it flipped, and Chris was able to grab the lead and then hold on. From that point on, Suiko was getting some pretty nasty RNG, though, so it was proving very difficult for him to catch up. What are we doing here? Not sure these guys actually have the invite to join the server, so I think we're just going to wrap this up, and hopefully we can interview them the next time, or we'll get that sorted out for future matches. But I want to thank everybody for watching here today, because both these runners did really well for our very first tournament match here. So over the next 5 weeks, we'll be having a series of races to whittle down our field from 25 to 16, and then from that point on, we'll be moving to a single elimination bracket. From that point on, with best of 3 and best of 5 matches. So please look forward to that over the next coming couple of months. I hope you guys enjoyed this one. We'll definitely be doing many, many more of these races in the future. So with that, I think we're going to wrap it up here. And then if there's any other matches after this, I hope you guys enjoy those. But so I'm going to bid you guys good night, and we'll see you next time. We have a couple matches tomorrow, I believe, currently scheduled. I'll double check that just in case. Yeah, we have 2 matches scheduled for tomorrow for 4 p.m. and 7 p.m. Eastern. Hopefully on these Speed Gaming channels, we'll find out. But hopefully you guys will tune in and keep following us. All right. Until then, we'll see you next time. Have a good evening, folks.